Nightbirds on Nantucket by Joan Aiken, Chapter 6. Aunt Tribulation, Cows and Sheep, Green Boots in the Attic. Aunt Tribulation is hungry. Pen meets a stranger. "Light another candle," ordered the woman in the bed, "and let's have a look at you. She said to Dido. "You don't favor my side of the family. Must take after that poor sickly Sarah." "You've got it wrong, ma'am," Dido said hastily. "That's Pen there. I'm Dido Twite." Although she stared at the girls pretty sharply, it was hard for them to see much of Pen's aunt. She held the bedclothes up to her chin and had a nightcap with a wide frill that left most of her face in shadow. They could just make out a gaunt nutcracker chin, a thin nose so like a ship's rudder that Dido half expected it to move from side to side. A pair of tinted glasses hid Aunt Tribulation's eyes from view. Dido grinned, thinking of the wolf, and subdued an urge to exclaim, "Why, Auntie Trib, what big eyes you have!" "You're a pasty-faced little bag of bones," Aunt Tribulation commented, looking at Pen. "Haven't filled out as you grew, have you? Well, I hope you're both used to hard work, that's all. You'll get no lounging and pampering here." She thumped on the floor with a rubber-shod stick to emphasize her words. "There's all the house chores and the farm work I can't help you, as I've been sick abed ever since I got here. This damp island air turns a body's bones to corkscrews, so you'd best get to bed now. There's milking to be done in the morning." But I can't milk," exclaimed Pen in horror. "You'll have to learn then, miss," Aunt Tribulation returned shortly. "Oh, come on, Pen," Dido murmured. "It's Rusty looking for the cows, but I suppose it's got to be done by somebody. Where shall we sleep, Aunt Trib?" "In the chamber at the other end of the passage. Sheets and blankets are in the cedarwood box. Milk the cows at 4, take them to pasture, feed the hens and pigs, groom the mule, light the stove. You'll need to chop some kindling if there's none in the cellar, and the peat's in the peat house. And you can bring me a pot of coffee and a bowl of milk toast at 7. Look sharp now." Too dazed by the length of this list of tasks to make any protest, the girls retreated and found their room, which was as bleak and clean as Cousin Anne's, but lacked the washstand, square of oilcloth, and braided rug. Shivering and yawning, they dragged comforters and sheets from the cedar box, made up the bed, and tumbled into it, huddling against one another for warmth. "I'm that tired I could sleep for a week of Thursdays," Dido murmured drowsily. "Dear knows how we'll ever wake at 4. Pen fell asleep immediately, but Dido, tired though she was, lay tossing and turning for a long time. Outside, the wind sighed over the moors, and a night heron was calling, a harsh, monotonous quack, quack, that went on until Dido, in exasperation, pressed her hands over her ears and shut out the noise. "How am I ever going to get away from here?" she wondered. "Aunt Trib's quite as bad as poor Pen made out. A real sure enough tartar. How am I going to find someone else to look after Pen or take her part? And why does Auntie Trib's voice sound so blame familiar? Where have I heard it before?" This certainly is a moldy lookout. Now that Pen was asleep, and it was not necessary to cheer and encourage her, Dido could admit to herself that she too felt lonely and miserable. London had never seemed farther away, and it was hard to imagine the bright, bustling streets in this dark and windy place. Her pillow was wet with homesick tears before she finally sank into a troubled sleep. Dido need not have worried about how they were to wake. There were 3 roosters on the farm, whose lusty crowing had the girls roused long before any touch of dawn had crossed the sky. Dressing themselves hastily in warm things, Dido put on the denims and red shirt she had bought. They stumbled downstairs and went to the byre. "Chase me if I ever thought I'd have to milk a cow," muttered Dido. Staring up at them in the dim light, they looked as large as battleships. "But at least there's only 3 of 'em. Let's start with this yellow one. Do you reckon we could tie her up somehow, Pen, while we works on her? Could you hold her tail?" "Oh, I wouldn't dare." Pen was indeed so white and shaking that Dido took pity on her and said, "Here, young'un, you go feed the hens. You told me you done that with your ma. I'll tackle old Mossface here, and see if you can find some eggs. I'd fancy half a dozen for breakfast. My stomach's so wrapped round my backbone." Left alone with the yellow cow, who seemed quite peaceably inclined, the resourceful Dido found a bit of rope and made fast both horns and tail to pegs in the wall. Despite doleful bellows of protest, she found a three-legged milking stool and sat down upon it. Extracting any milk was another matter, however. "You needn't trouble to keep kicking the pail over. There ain't a drop in it," Dido snapped when 20 minutes had gone by. She was hot, damp, and tousled, while Buttercup seemed calmly resolved to stand there till Judgment Day without cooperating. A cheerful laugh from the doorway made Dido spin around. "Bless me if I ever saw the like," the woman who stood there exclaimed. "You'll never get any milk from her that way, child." "Doggone it, missus," Dido said, pushing back the hair from her forehead. "How does I get milk, then? It'd be easier to squeeze it out of a millstone. Here, untie those ropes, and I'll show you." The woman, a good-humored, plump, fresh-faced individual, pulled out a sacking apron she had with her in a basket and put it on, and proceeded to give Dido a lesson in milking. "You shape it all right well," she said when at last the 3 cows were milked. "You'll soon get the hang now. You see how it's done. I thought I'd just step over and see it was all well. I've been coming here a bit to see the animals and tend Miss Casket while she was sick. She said her young'uns was expected this week, but I judged you still might need a bit of help." "We're mighty obliged to you, missus," Dido said gruffly. "There's a fair deal to learn. Now I'd best go and see if young Pen's got into trouble." Pen had succeeded in feeding the chickens, but was paralyzed with terror by the hogs. They found her shivering outside the pen, listening to the hungry squeals within. "They won't hurt you, child," the woman said kindly. "Here, give 'em this basket of mash." Dido did so. "So you're little penitents, are you? Bless me, how you have grown since you've been away. Do you mind how we used to come and see you sometimes? How my boy Nate used to bring over the bantam eggs?" "Why, you must be Mrs. Pardon!" Pen cried joyfully. "Oh, have you come to help us? You are kind." "Can't stop long," Mrs. Pardon said cheerfully, "for it's a fair step home, and I've got my old father, Nate's granddad, sick in bed, so we'd best get on. But I can see you're a pair of right smart young'uns, and will soon know your way round. Just turn the cows loose in the bottom pasture, Dido, won't you? And Pen, bring in the eggs." With Mrs. Pardon's assistant, they whirled through the rest of the tasks. She showed them how to light the pot-bellied stove. "Never heard of burning earth afore," grumbled Dido. "And don't it weigh heavy?" As she stumped up with the bucketful from the outhouse. "That's peat, lovey," Mrs. Pardon told her. "Makes the best smoked bacon from here to Schenectady." "And don't I wish I had a bit inside me now," Dido sighed, taking out a pail to the log pump, which was so stiff and heavy that both children had to hang on the handle before any water could be obtained. "This water comes all the way from the White Mountains," Pen remarked. "I remember dear Mamma telling me so." They staggered indoors with the pail between them. "Then why the blazes didn't they take it a bit farther and put a tap inside while they was about it?" Dido said irritably, but things were looking up now. The sun had risen, the stove was crackling finely, and the big kitchen seemed a warm and pleasant place. "Mercy, I must fly along home, or Pa will wake up and wonder what's happened to me," Mrs. Pardon said, looking at the grandfather clock. "I'll be over tomorrow morning again to give ye a lesson in butter making. You can always come to me if you're in trouble. It's not much more than 3 miles to my house, just this side of Pulpus." She took off her apron and gave them both a hearty kiss and hurried away, just as a loud thumping on the floor overhead proclaimed that Aunt Tribulation was awake. Pen went up to see what she wanted and was greeted with the words, "Where's my breakfast? You're 10 minutes late." "I'm very sorry, Aunt Tribulation." Sorry is not good enough. Don't forget to cut the crusts off the toast, and scald the coffee pot, and clear the coffee with eggshells. And when you've brought me my breakfast and washed the dishes and towels, you can scrub the kitchen floor and dust the parlor. Then you'll have to make some bread, and that other girl can hoe the potato field." "Huh," Dido said when the program was unfolded to her. "Don't she want us to cut down no trees, or slap a few bricks together to put in a new barn? Anyhow, so I'm a-going to have some breakfast before I start on that lot. Here, I'll take up the old girl's prog, Pen. I've fried you some eggs. Sit down and get 'em inside you. You look like a bit of cheesecloth." Aunt Tribulation received her breakfast tray without enthusiasm. "Wash your face before you come up another time, girl," she said harshly. "And where's my napkin? You should have used the pink china like this kid. You should have used the pink china. This is kitchen stuff." "Look a-here, you ungrateful old cuss," burst out Dido, her patience at an end. "You ought to be thankful I don't bring it up in a baking pan. Lord bless us, am I glad you ain't my Aunt Trib." She ran out of the room, slamming the door behind her, but was hardly in the kitchen before the thumping overhead began again. "I'll go," Pen said bravely. "I've had all I want." She gulped the last of her coffee and hurried upstairs. Dido, shoving down eggs and bacon, heard a long, snarling monologue going on overhead. She could distinguish the tone, but not the words. Giving Pen what for because I sauced her," she thought. And going to the top of the stairs, she called, "Pen, Pen, come quick, the cows have broke into the tater field." Pen ran down looking scared. There, it was just to fiddle you out of that old harpy's room," Dido said cheerfully, patting her on the shoulder. "Come on, let's get these crocks washed. Auntie Trib can stew in her own vinegar for a bit. I don't reckon she can be very sick, not if she has the strength to thump the way she's doing now." To Dido's great surprise and relief, Pen proved a handy little creature with the indoor tasks. She had been taught by her mother to wash and bake and cook and polish. She soon took over the making of meals, "which is as well," Dido admitted, "for I never could abide housework, and I don't know a waffle iron from a skillet. Eggs and bacon is as far as I go. If I'd a had to make the bread, it'd turn out tougher than old boots. It beats all how you get it to rise so, Pen. You'll have to teach me. One thing, housework ain't so bad when it's just us on our own. In fact, it's quite a lark. Pity the old gal couldn't go back to wherever she came from." "Oh, Dido," confessed Pen. They were out of earshot of Aunt Tribulation now, sociably hoeing the enormous potato field together. "She frightens me dreadfully. Her eyes glare so. At least I'm sure they do behind her glasses. And her voice is so angry and scolding. Now I know what Mamma meant when she said Aunt Tribulation was a tartar. I'm sure I shall never get used to her." Now, Pen," Dido admonished. "Remember as how you're learning to be brave. Every morning when you get up, you must say 20 times, 'I am not scared of Auntie Trib.' You best start now." "I am not scared of Auntie Trib," Pen said obediently, and then she broke out, "It's no use, Dido, I am scared of her." "Well, we'll have to get you out of the habit," Dido said stoutly. "You watch me. See how I stand up to the old sulphur bottom." Pen gulped, nodding. She looked apprehensive. "Do you remember her now you see her again, Penny?" Dido asked. "Is she like she was when you were small?" "Just as frightening," Pen said, "but I don't really remember her much. She looks older than I expected and even crosser than I remembered." This is a moldy lookout for me getting back to England, Dido said to herself. "How am I ever going to stiffen up Pen so she don't mind old Aunt Gruff and Grumble? For that's the only chance there seems to be. Who else would come and live out here at the back of the end of nowhere?" When the noon hour came, they entered the house, to the accompaniment of a regular hurricane of thumps from upstairs. Pen ran up to inquire her aunt's wishes and returned trembling and in tears, so fiercely had she been greeted with, "Fetch gingerbread and applesauce and look sharp about it, miss. What have you been doing all morning, I'd like to know? Idling and playing and picking flowers, I suppose." "Oh, pray don't scold, Aunt Tribulation, pray don't. Indeed, we haven't been idling. We have hoed more than half the potato field." "Old harridan, I wonder how she knew you'd made some gingerbread," Dido said. "She must have a nose on her like a bloodhound. There's some apples down cellar, Penny. I saw them when I was getting the kindling for the stove. And there's hams and onions and molasses and bushels of beans, so we shan't starve, and nor will old mortification upstairs." As Pen hurried to get the apples, Dido, stoking the stove, muttered, "Ill my eye, if she's so ill, what's her nightcap ribbon doing on the kitchen floor?" "You've been poking and snooping and spying, you old madam. You to see whether we did the housework, you horrid old hypocrite." When the applesauce was made, she took a saucerful up to Aunt Tribulation, with the cap ribbon ostentatiously stuck like an ornament. at the sight of the dish. "I guess this is yours, Auntie Trib," she remarked innocently. "I can't think how it came to be lying on the floor downstairs, because you haven't been down, have you?" Aunt Tribulation took this very much amiss. "Impertinent girl! Don't speak to me in that way. Apologize immediately." "Why should I?" Dido said reasonably. "You ain't been extra polite to us." "You shall be shut up in the attic till you learn better manners." "Tally-ho, I'm agreeable," said Dido. "You can just about do with a nap arter all that hoeing." "Not now," said Aunt Tribulation, who appeared suddenly to recollect that she had other plans for the girls. "I want you and Penitence to shift the sheep up to the high pasture, and mind you count them. Do that as soon as you've washed the dishes, and don't forget to make up the stove. And bring the cows back when you come, and milk them, and shut them up, and skim the cream, and make butter." "Sure that's all?" inquired Dido. "Nothing else as how you can lay your mind to?" "Sartin. Tooraloo then." "Is you positive there ain't any wolves on Nantucket?" Dido asked Pen, as they walked down the sandy lane to the pasture where the sheep were to be seen grazing. "No, why? There's nothing but deer and jackrabbits." "I was only thinking," Dido replied pensively, "as how it would be very convenient if a wolf was to break in and gobble up that old tartar. Never mind. Us'll get her tamed. I'll have her eating out of your hand before I'm through. Tell you what, Pen, whenever you see her, think to yourself, poor old Aunt Tribulation, I wonder if your rheumatics is a-troubling you. Now, how the mischief are we to count these here blame sheep?" "There's a gate in those railings over there," Pen said. "If you could get behind them and drive them, I could count them as they came through." "Clever girl, Pen. You've got a right smart head on your shoulders, when you doesn't get all of a pucker and a fluster." Dido ran off across the rough pasture, which was not grass, but low, growing saggy shrubs and bushes. Pen waited by the gate, and, conquering a slight tendency to shrink in alarm as the sheep streamed toward her, manfully counted them. 223, she said when they were all through and being driven up toward the high pasture. "I wonder if that is the right number." "Well, if it ain't, you may lay Aunt Trib will tell us fast enough. Croopus, don't the wind blow up here, and can't we see a long way?" "All over the island," Pen said wanly, looking across the rolling shrubby moorlands in the line to the ocean. On the south shore, white mushrooming clouds of spray from breakers could be seen dimly through a belt of haze. "What's that white tower to the east?" San Katie's Head Lighthouse. There's a forest between us and it," Pen said with a faint glimmer of pride. "But you can't see it. It's called the Hidden Forest. That's uncommon, isn't it?" "Rummy," agreed Ditto. "So's your pa's house. Why has it got a balcony on the roof? And why is it standing on legs?" "I don't know about the legs. Grandpa Casket built the house. The balcony was for Granny, so she could look out to sea and see if Grandpa's ship was in sight. Mama didn't like going up there. It made her giddy." "It's a naffy idea," Dido said. "I'd like to go up. I reckon it's a first-rate little island, Pen. Us could have a fine time here once we've got Auntie Trib pacified." "Look, isn't that a man coming to call at the house? We'd better go home." "Race you down the hill," Dido said, and was astonished when Pen nodded, picked up her skirts, and darted away down the sandy track. But when they reached the house, panting and laughing, nobody seemed to be about. The man had vanished. They ran into the kitchen, and Dido went up to Aunt Tribulation's room. "Has somebody called here?" she asked, knocking and entering. There was a sort of flurry from the bed as Aunt Tribulation huddled down in her pillows. 2 spots of crimson showed on her thin cheeks. "Do not come in until I give you leave, miss," she croaked. "Sorry, I'm sure. We was feared you might have had to get up and answer the door." "I have done no such thing. Go and milk the cows." "Good lad, don't be such a pelter. I'm just a-going," Dido said, injured. Then, recollecting, she added, "Never mind, poor Aunt Trib. Is your rheumatics very bad?" and shut the door. But in the passage outside she paused, remembering that she had noticed the door next to Aunt Tribulation's opened on an upward flight of stairs. Must lead to the fancy balcony, she thought. I've a good mind to step up. Won't take but a moment. She tried the door. Strangely enough, it was locked now, though she was sure it had been open when she had noticed it before. Why are you loitering out there, girl? Aunt Tribulation called angrily from her room. Dido shrugged and ran downstairs. Do you want to make the butter, seeing as you know how, dutiful? She proposed. I'll fetch in Mossface and make a start at milking. Penitence agreed gratefully. You'll have to face the cows sometime, though, Dido warned, and I can tell you they ain't a quarter as fierce as Auntie. When the milking was done, and Dido was helping Pen in the dairy, taking spells with the heavy churn, she asked, Does that door by Aunt Trib's room lead up to the roof, Penny? Yes, and to the attic. Where's the key kept? In the door, mostly, Pen said in surprise, but there's a spare, because once, when I was little, I locked myself in there. Oh, I was scared, and so was Mamma. Where's the spare, then? On a hook at the back of the china closet. Why? Just, I've a fancy to go up there sometime, Dido replied calmly. She did not add that she was also curious to know what Aunt Tribulation was up to. It seemed clear that while the girls were out, she had locked the attic door and taken the key. What could be her reason? The butter thumped against the side of the churn. It's come, announced Pen with relief, opening the lid and looking inside. That's as well, said Dido, rubbing her biceps. Another minute and my arms would have busted right off at the sockets. What'll us do now? I suppose we're free, Pen said doubtfully. I'd like to do some lessons and write my journal and sew my sampler. Not on your elephant. There's the old gal a-thumping again. Aunt Tribulation called imperiously for Pen to bring her more gingerbread and applesauce with a drink of the new milk. Did you scald the crocks? She demanded, and salt the butter? And how many sheep did you count? 253, or 223, Aunt Tribulation, Pen quavered. One missing. That one must be found, miss. Yes, Aunt. Make haste and set about it, then. Pen bore up till she was downstairs, and she burst into tears. Oh, I'm tired, and look, it's nearly dark outside. Do you think we really need to go tonight, Dido? I'm sure we'd never find it, and I don't believe I can walk another step. Nor you shall, said Dido sturdily. Be blowed to the old besom. How does she expect us to find one sheep in the dark in umpty miles of wild country? That's a crazy notion. It'll look after itself till morning, I reckon. We'll find it then. Run along to bed, Pen, while I stoke the stove and lock the back door. Pen was already half asleep by the time Dido tiptoed and snuggled in beside her under the quilted comforters. I brought the back and front door keys, she whispered, tucking them under the pillow, just so's to be on the safe side. Night, dutiful. Good night, Dido. Halfway through the night, Dido woke up and lay listening sharply. This ain't half a creaky old house, she thought. Every pine board seemed to have its own separate voice, and when the wind blew, it was almost like being on board ship. But no wind was blowing now, and yet a board had creaked. She was sure it was a board. Outside, she could hear a night heron croaking on the moors, but this was a different sound, quite close at hand. Burglars? Dido slid a hand under the pillow and satisfied herself that both keys were still there. Pen slept peacefully. The creak was not repeated, and after a while, Dido, too, drifted back into sleep and dreamed that she was asking Aunt Tribulation to lend her the fare to England, while Pen weepingly begged her not to go, and Aunt Tribulation made no reply except to shake her red wattles, wink a black beady eye, and croak, Certainly not, certainly not. Get up, you lazy girl. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Wake up, Pen, it's morning. Oh, no, it can't be, moaned Pen. I could sleep for hours longer. Never mind. At least we shan't have to light the stove this morning. I can just about do with some bacon and coffee. They dressed in the warm kitchen while Dido was brushing Pen's long hair. Pen said, That's odd. I thought we left the window fastened. Look, it's only pushed to. Dido considered the window in frowning silence for a moment before going out to the byre. But she only said, Oh, well, lucky nobody noticed it and got in. Mrs. Pardon appeared again to help them with the morning tasks, and was amazed to find they had managed to make the butter themselves. Why, you're a regular pair of young farmers, she declared. I'd best teach you how to make cheese, then, and soap. I've brought you some goodies. I know young'uns always like candy, and a mess a pooquoise in case your auntie fancies a bit of fish. Is she any better today? We haven't seen her this morning. She was in rare brisk spirits. Last night, Pen and Dido said together. She is a rare brisk un, isn't she, your auntie? I was surprised when I seed her. She's not a bit like Captain Casket. Hadn't you seen her before, then? Dido asked, surprised. No, lovey. She's never lived in Nantucket since she was a gal, you see. She went off to live with her grandmother in Vine Rapids. Dido pondered over this while the animals were tended and the cheese-making went forward. Then she thought to herself, there's nothing to prove that this lady is Aunt Tribulation at all. Pen doesn't really remember her, but if she isn't Aunt Tribulation, who is she? Dido milked while Mrs. Pardon showed Pen how to cook the pooquoise. Then, after they had breakfasted, and while Aunt Tribulation was graciously accepting the delicacy, inspired by a sudden idea, Dido found the spare attic key and ran softly upstairs. She slipped the key into the keyhole, it fitted, the door opened, and she tiptoed on up to the next flight. She found herself in a huge room with a sloping roof and long dormer windows. It stretched the length of the house and was filled with all sorts of odds and ends. Old trunks, old boots, boxes, bales of sacking, flour bags, 2 stuffed birds under a glass cover, some wooden stub-toe skates, an old fowling gun, and so forth. Dido looked around sharply. She did not quite know what she was searching for, but almost at once she found it. Faint, sandy footprints on the floor. Those weren't made long ago, Dido said to herself. If they had been, they'd as soon dried up and blowed away. A ship's ladder and a trapdoor led out onto the roof. Looking down from the widow's walk balcony, Dido saw Mrs. Pardon hurry away down the track toward Pulpus. I'd best be getting back to work, she thought, before the old gal finds I'm up here. And she closed the trapdoor and tiptoed down the ladder. At its foot, she stopped short, riveted by the sight of something she had missed on her first hasty survey of the attic. Behind one of the chests, as if they had been hurriedly thrust out of sight, were a bundle of ladies' clothes, bonnet, gloves, a black silk dress, and a cloak of grey twill. On top of the bundle were a pair of bottle-green boots. Dido tiptoed over and inspected them. They had white stains on them. Salt water, she said to herself. Those haven't been here long. I'd best get out of here. After giving another quick darting look round the attic, she slipped down the stairs and softly closed the locked door behind her. None too soon, it seemed. She could hear the terrified wails coming from Aunt Tribulation's room. Dido said I might go to bed, Penitence was saying through her tears. Dido said we'd never find it in the dark, and indeed, Aunt Tribulation, we were dreadfully tired. Dido said that looking at night time was a crazy notion. She did she? She shall be punished for that, and you, miss, had better go out now. And I don't wish to see you again until the sheep is found. I am going to make myself obeyed from now on, do you understand? Aunt Tribulation rapped on the floor with her stick. Frowning, Dido walked into the room. So, girl, Aunt Tribulation addressed her fiercely. You countermand my instructions, do you? Yes, Dido agreed. They was downright addlepated. And you did not to shout at Pen that way. You'll scare her into hysterics. Pen, she added, more in sorrow than anger, haven't I told you not to be putting the blame on someone else? Stick up for yourself, girl. Pen gave her a miserable glance. Still, we mustn't be too hard on the old gal, Dido added with a sudden seraphic smile at Aunt Tribulation. When she shouts at you, Pen, remember her rheumatics is hurting her cruel bad. Plainly, Aunt Tribulation did not quite know how to deal with this. Penitence, she snapped. Be off! Pen hesitated, then ran out of the room. As for you, Aunt Tribulation went on, you can miss your dinner. Go out, finish hoeing the potato field, then do the cornfield, and don't come back till it's finished. Blister your potato field, Dido replied calmly. I'm a-going to help Pen find that sheep, and if I miss my dinner, so will you, because there won't be no one to bring it up to you. With which parting shot, she ran downstairs to the kitchen. Pen had already started down the track. Dido quickly put up a bundle of food, bread, butter, cheese, a handful of dates, and the candy sticks Mrs. Pardon had brought with her. Miss my dinner be blowed, she thought. Then she ran after Pen, who could be seen trudging miserably along about half a mile in front. Dido waved and called unavailingly. Pen was too far away to hear, and the wind was blowing the wrong way, and hurried in pursuit. I mustn't be hard on Pen, she thought as she ran. It's bad enough for the poor little creep to be bawled out by Aunt Tartar without me bearing on her too. But she does try a body's patience at times, weak like her da. At last she caught up with Pen. Hey-ho, she shouted. Look, I brought us a picnic. If we're to spend a day on the moors, we might as well enjoy ourselves and make it an outing. Penitence looked affrighted. But she said you were to miss your dinner. I heard her all the way down the stairs. Look, Pen, Dido said patiently. Whose victuals is these? Your pa's, ain't they? He asked me to stay with you, didn't he? He didn't say I was to miss no dinners. And who done the work? Who fed the pigs and milked the cow and made the bread? You and I done it. Auntie Trib never done a hand's turn. So she's got no call to order us about. Pen seemed so astonished and alarmed at these revolutionary ideas that Dido left her to digest them in peace while they searched for the missing sheep. There were plenty of others to be seen grazing in the rough pastures as they went farther afield, but not one with the red C, which was Captain Casket's mark. At last, when they were about halfway to Polyps and the sun was high in the sky, Dido suggested they should rest and eat. I wonder if you couldn't stay with Mrs. Pardon, she suggested, as they sat on the bank munching their bread and cheese. Pen's face lit up. Oh, do you suppose I could? She is so kind and nice, but perhaps she is too busy with her sick father. Glad of another pair of hands, I say, Dido said. After all, you're handy about the house, Pen, but I suppose we'd have to get your pa's permission, or Auntie Trib would never let you go. And the mischief is how to find him if he's off again chasing his everlasting pink whale. Why don't you set your fist to righting your pa? Do you think a letter would change his mind, Dido? I'll write him just as soon as I can, said Penitence. Oh, look, Pen, I do believe that there's a sheep with a red mark. Look by the bushes. Quick, let's go after him. Brr! Though ain't it turned cold all of a sudden? While they were eating, the children had not noticed that a fine white sea mist had come creeping over the island. Just as they started after the wandering sheep, the mist caught up with and engulfed them. Hey, where are you, Pen? Dido called anxiously. Here, I'm here. Blame it, it's like walking through porridge. Where in thunderation is your voice coming from? Stand still till I find you, Dido said, feeling her way forward, but Pen suddenly shouted excitedly. Oh, I see it. I see the sheep. I believe I can catch it too. There came the sound of running footsteps, which faded into the distance, and then a disappointed cry. Oh, drat! Missed it, diagnosed Dido. Seconds later, a damp, dew-spangled sheep bolted past her, nearly knocking her down, and disappeared into the dimness before she could grab it. Blazes, Dido thought. Now I've lost 'em both, Pen and the sheep. Which had I better go after? Pen, I reckon. The sheep can look after itself. Penitence, she called lustily. Dutiful Penitence, where are you? No answer, only a plaintive faraway bleat. Not you, woolly knob, Dido thought crossly. She floundered on into the smoky whiteness, tripping over wet tangling shrubs, getting caught in thorn bushes and low-growing holly, stumbling into holes and out of them again. What a blame awful country, she thought. Why can't they have some decent grass, instead of all this dreaded scrubbage that tears your shins to ribbons? Thank goodness I've got breeches on. Poor old Pen in her thin white stockings must be getting scritched to pieces. Pen, where are you? This time there was no answer at all. Doggedly, Dido went on hunting and calling. She must have covered acres of ground in the course of the next 2 or 3 hours, but never had so much as a glimpse of either Pen or the sheep. At last she struck a track which led uphill. Dark was falling by now. Dispirited, weary, and very worried about Pen, she turned along it. Maybe I'll come to a house or farm, she thought, where I can ask somebody to give me a hand hunting. At this rate, the poor little brat stands a chance of being out all night, and that'd just about do for Pen. She'd be seeing ghosts and boggarts for the rest of her life. She hurried along the track, which sloped more and more steeply uphill, and suddenly brought her out into a familiar barnyard. Why, curse it, Dido thought angrily. I'm home. What's the good of that? No hopes Auntie Trib will give a hand. I'd best turn right round and go back the other way to Mrs. Pardon's. She was just turning wearily down the dusky track when a lantern light showed in the barn door. Dido! Called Pen's eager voice. Is that you? Penny! Dido exclaimed joyfully. You're back, then? Yes, and what do you think? I found the sheep again. Wasn't that a bit of luck? And Dido, I had such a curious adventure. Listen, you found the sheep. You brought it back all on your own? Dido was amazed. I never thought you had it in you, Pen. However did you manage to fetch it along? Where is it now? In the barn. I let it in. How, for gracious sakes? Well, said Pen rather shyly, I thought how would Dido said about it. And as I hadn't got a rope, I took off my stockings and tied them together. It was the sheep that found the way home, really, not me. But I was dreadfully worried about where you'd got to. I'm ever so glad to see you. Well, us had better turn to and do the evening jobs while there's still a glimmer daylight, Dido said. You can tell me about your adventure when we're indoors making supper, Pen. They made haste with their tasks. Both were tired, wet, and hungry, though Dido grinned to herself as she thought how much hungrier Aunt Tribulation would be. Done the fowls? Good. That's the lot, then, she said to Pen as they met at the back door. Oh, Dido, breathed Pen fearfully. There's a light in the kitchen, do you suppose? Shh! Dido laid a milky finger on her lips and opened the kitchen door. The kitchen was warm and bright, but had lost some of its cheerful atmosphere, for Aunt Tribulation, fully dressed, was sitting in a rocking chair by the stove. She was no less formidable up than she had been in bed, although she had taken off her tinted glasses. The gray eyes that they concealed were cold and singularly unwelcoming. She wore a brown and white checked gingham dress and a brown shawl, an enormous brown brooch with enough hair in it to stuff a pin-cushion fastened her white fichu. Her gray hair was strained back into a tight knot behind her head. She looked hungry. We found the sheep, Aunt Tribulation, Pen announced proudly after a momentary check in the doorway. So I should hope so. You've taken long enough about it. Is the milking done? Then hurry up and make my supper. Pen must change first, said Dido firmly. Her dress is sopping, and she's got no stockings on. Make haste, then, and pray, why were the larder and cellar doors locked? And what have you done with the keys? Oh, dear, did you want them? Dido exclaimed innocently, drawing the keys out of her breeches pocket. I locked the doors because we found the kitchen window open this morning, and I was feared that burglars or wild animals might get in and steal our victuals or frighten you, Auntie Trib. Oh, of course, I never thought you'd be coming down for summit. I thought you was much too ill. I am sorry. Did you get peckish then? Aunt Tribulation did not answer, but looked daggers, while Dido, pretending not to notice, made up the stove and started frying bacon. Pen'll do us some pancakes when she comes down. She's a dab at pancakes. And she set a pot of beans a-baking in the oven this morning. What a shame you never thought to look in there, isn't it, Aunt Trib? You could have been eating baked beans all this time. Supper was taken in baleful silence. As soon as the children had washed up the dishes, they escaped to bed, Dido almost bursting with suppressed laughter. Now tell me all your adventures, dutiful, she said when they were snug under the quilt and the candle blown out. It was the strangest thing. After we lost each other, I hunted for you, and I ran towards where I thought you had been standing, but I must have gone astray, for I ran on and on, a long way, and suddenly I found myself among high trees. Trees? Why, there ain't but bushes and bits of scrub for miles. I must have been in the hidden forest, you see, Pen explained. It seemed so mysterious in the mist. When I called for you, as I had been doing off and on all the time, my voice echoed back so boomingly that I was afraid and dared not do it any more. I became confused in the wood, and trying to return the way I had come, went on, I think, in quite the wrong direction. But all of a sudden, I found myself up against a strange kind of barrier. A fence-like! No, not a fence, nor yet a wall. It was about as high as my head and very thick, and round like a great iron pipe. Yes, like an iron pipe, as big as a great tree trunk. That's rum, said Dido. What held it up, then? It was mounted all along its length and it was very long. I never saw either end, on pairs of cartwheels. Sounds like maybe someone gets their water through it, Dido suggested. But there are no farms anywhere near the hidden forest. It's a solitary place. Well, I don't know what to make of it, Dido said, yawning. You never knew it was there afore? No, never. But that's not the end of the story. No? Hurry up then, dutiful. My eyes is closing in spite of themselves. I thought I would feel my way along the pipe and so get out of the wood. But I had not gone very far when I bumped into a man. What sort of man? What sort of man? What was he doing? Oh, Dido, he was strange. He was tapping on the pipe with a hammer. He gave a great start. When I bumped into him, I would have screamed, but he seemed even more frightened. I said I was lost, and which way to Sol's Hill. He said, "Whisper," laying his finger to his lips and looking all round, and then he pointed which way I should go and led me to the edge of the woods. Then he whispered something, and it took me such a long time to make out what he was asking. He spoke in such a strange foreign way. At last, I realized it was boots he wanted. He showed me his feet in thin, foreign-looking shoes, all wet and torn and muddy. So I promised I would have a look at the farm. There might be an old pair of Papa's sea boots. And was that all he wanted? And he said, I think, that he had a great longing for something sweet. Could I bring him any cakes or sugar or jam to keep out the cold and damp? He said he would wait by the fork in the track every night from 7 till 9. Was he a beggar? No, indeed. I am sure he was not, for he gave me money to pay for the boots. 3 English gold coins. English coins? Dido was suddenly wide awake. How do you know they were English? Because there's a picture of a king with the words, Carolus II Rex BR. Good cats alive, Dido said. And an old guinea piece. There's still quite a lot of them about. My pa used to get them playing on his hautboy. Do you think the man was English, Pen? He certainly was not American, but he didn't speak like you. His language was very queer. He was a sad-looking man with a face like a monkey, and big ears, and nearly bald. He said not to tell anyone that I had seen him, and if I came with the boots, I was to croak like a night heron. Night heron? What's that? One of those birds that go on yakking all the perishing night. Yes, Pen said. I think that was what he meant. And he said how glad he was that he would soon be back in Europe. Did he? Dido was more and more interested. This man was really going back to Europe soon, she thought. And if I could make friends with him, and if I could get Pen fixed up to stay with Mrs. Pardon. Who can the man be? Oh, there's a chance that I could go with him is there a chance I could go with him as far as London? We must look him out a pair of boots tomorrow, Pen, she said. I don't mind taking him to him if you're scared to go back. There's a deal of old boots up in the attic. And 1 pair of salt-stained bottle green ones that ought not be there, she remembered just before she went to sleep. Was it not probable that Aunt Tribulation and the veiled stowaway of the Sarah casket were one and the same person? And that is the end of chapter 6.